I call William Irvine.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki te whare paramata. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With a government that proudly flies the Labour flag, it might be hard to understand why, despite nearly 5 years in power, this current government has allowed the exploitation of young people to persist. This is a government that prides itself on reversing the costly and tragic legacy of 9 years of National, but in this area too, we have neglected youth. I'm proud to commend the passage of this bill today, and I'm going to remind you, as many speakers across this week already have, that we would not be having this debate, that this policy would not exist if we fairly gave young people the right to vote. That is to say that if we were fairly enfranchised and if our voices were heard by those in power, then we would not be exploited for less than the value of our labour. Mr. Speaker, it's time to call this policy what it is: exploitation. This is nothing more than an attempt by businesses to squeeze young, vulnerable workers for every last dollar of their productivity. Young people are being paid less than their adult peers for no justifiable reason. We work just as hard as adults, we produce just as much value, and we deserve better. I'd like to take the chance here to acknowledge the excellent work that's also being done to get people living wages, because let's not forget that the minimum wage itself is also exploitative. It is completely reprehensible that in Aotearoa we have nearly 10% of the population earning a minimum wage, earning less than a living wage, and earning less than they need to live in dignity. I'd also dismiss the argument that we hear that this legislation will cause businesses to stop employing young people. Madam Speaker, this is nothing more than scaremongering perpetrated by the elitist business community. The jobs that are affected here are jobs that are already being performed at the adult minimum wage. They are jobs that, as have been acknowledged, are essential to the functioning of society, like many of the young people who were employed in supermarkets as workers during the pandemic. It is these young people that kept our businesses afloat. It was our labour, our value and our hard work that kept the world sane, and all we get in repayment is $16.96. Look, it's easy for us to depersonalise this bill. It's easy to sit here in these comfortable seats and to forget the real impact of what this legislation could do. But I urge you, when it comes down to the vote today, to remember those who are most impacted by the starting out wage. When young people get their first job, many are doing so to support their family, or to support themselves where their family cannot. And I want you to weigh that in your minds against what you might have heard from the opposition today, because this law will not hurt businesses. It will give them better, more motivated workers. But even if it does, and even if we lose some margin of business revenue, this Parliament and this government has a duty to put workers first. Finally, though, in my last seconds, I want to urge you to remember that this fight doesn't stop at Youth Parliament. Helen Clark might not be the biggest fan of us, but she has reminded us that this bill can be removed, and it has in the past, and we will do so again. Thank you.
I now call on Josh Craig.